listen now to the Holy Gospel according to Mark, the first chapter. In fact, this is the very beginning of Mark's Gospel. A little bit ahead of that, all it said was the good news of Jesus Christ. And so we start to hear it. And so, John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, preaching a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. And the whole Judean countryside and all the people of Jerusalem went out to him. Confessing their sins, they were baptized by him in the river Jordan. Now John wore clothing made of camel's hair, with a leather belt around his waist, and he ate locusts and wild honey. Yum. And this was his message: "After me comes the one more powerful than I, the straps of whose sandals I am not worthy to stoop down and untie. I baptize you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit." At that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as Jesus was coming out of the water, he saw heaven being torn apart, and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven: "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. So I remember back when Pastor Allison and I were first married, deep in the last century. Yes, we were in our last year of college. I was 23 years old. It was winter, about the same time of year actually. And we lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a pretty big city actually. And we had an apartment way out of town. It was in the foothills of the mountains that surround the city. It was a Saturday. And I had to drive into the city for some reason, I don't remember now. And I was coming down this long, empty stretch off the mountain. It wasn't curvy, but it was actually a straight road. The kind of road that is slightly inclined, tempting you to drive a little fast, let's say. Okay? And it was way out there. There was no roadside buildings, no trees, no traffic at that time of day. It was kind of early in the morning on a Saturday, like 9 o'clock. I was all alone out there. And it had been snowing a little bit. And soon I could feel that awful feeling when the back tires are starting to do this little thing right here. You know what I'm saying? So I thought, I'm driving too fast, so I'll put on the brakes. Bad move. And this was before all that anti-lock brake technology and all that cool stuff, and you really have to know how to drive in that kind of weather. And here comes my back end. Woo! And then suddenly I'm going totally backwards down this road, and not a lot slower rate of speed than I was going. And so I'm just thinking, I'll coast to a stop. I'll coast to a stop. It'll be fine. So I see that there's a median strip on either side, and it's made of that little tiny pebble gravel. And I thought, well, as soon as I hit that, that'll just slow me down and I'll stop. Well, you kind of can guess what happens. So I hit that gravel, but I still got all this momentum. Hello, physics students. And so, woo! I totally flipped the car. Now it was a sideways flip, not an end over end, but it was like, whoa! Went around one time. Went around 2 times. Woo! Went around 3 times. Landed with the car face up, thank God. The windows blasted out. The radio's still blaring. It was so surreal. So I banged the car door. The car door opens. Even though the windows are crushed out and the roof is squished in, the door opens. I step out. I'm looking around. I'm dazed. And I look over. There is one building within walking distance. It's the fire station. So I walk over there, and I go to the front door next to the big, where the garage doors are, and open it up. Well, here's the thing. It was Saturday morning, but there happened to be one of these power-up training sessions that all the paramedics in the area came to at that place that day. And there were like 20 trained paramedics there just getting their, brush-up training. So I walk in, going, I've had an accident! And like 20 paramedics rushed me all at once, okay? I had a paramedic for every part of my body. Checking me out, whatever. I was okay. I was in really good hands. The car totaled, of course. Allison's wonderful car that gave his life for me. And I was okay. I was okay. But it's not always like that, is it? I think that many of us have lived through some very bad moments when it comes to motor vehicle accidents. We've been in them. We've had loved ones who've been in them. Some have walked away, and some have not. When there's a really bad accident, there's a device that rescue personnel use to tear open that mangled, crushed car and get to the person inside to rescue them. What is that device called?
Jaws of Life.
Jaws of Life. What a name. Jaws of Life. And what made me think about this was what happens in our gospel text this morning when Jesus is baptized. Now, I know this seems like kind of a strange, disturbing push together here. Weird thought. Connecting baptism and this horrible yet essential tool used by firefighters and rescue teams. I mean, baptism is all about babies and godparents and candles and that little bowl of water and that beautiful basin. Bright Sunday mornings, bright smiling moms and dads and grandparents, and bright and beautiful new lives just getting started. But in our text, I am hung up this morning on one word. The word is schizomenus. It's a Greek word. I know we don't know what that means offhand. The Gospel of Mark, all of our New Testament Gospels are written in the language originally of Greek. And this Greek word, schizomenus, means being torn open. As in, there it's in your text, verse 10, just as Jesus was coming out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And I just kept getting stuck on those words. Heaven being torn open. What are you getting at here, Mark? What are you trying to say, Mr. Gospel writer? So I did some investigating, and it turns out all four Gospels talk about this moment when Jesus was baptized. Mark, of the four Gospels, was the first one written. It's not in that order in your Bible. It's the second one in the order, but it's the first one that was written. The first one to write about this very moment. And Mark is the only one to make two unique observations that the other Gospel writers don't make. First, in Mark's version, only Jesus sees the heavens open and the Spirit come down like a dove. And that voice say from heaven, "You are my Son whom I love." So in Mark, when it happens, if only Jesus is hearing it, what is that meant to say to us? I'm not sure. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that in that moment, Jesus needed that encouragement to face all the tough things he was going to have to face. Could be. Maybe it's God saying, I'm opening up and I'm coming down to send you the Spirit, so you're going to be all powered up to do whichever you've got to do. We're coming for you. Maybe so. Interesting. That's the first thing. The second thing that I really want to point out to you is that only Mark tells us this thing that I find so strange. He's the only one that uses that word for heaven was torn open. Matthew, Luke, John, they just say heaven open. They use another word altogether. A nice, quiet little open word. Why? Were they trying to say it was like more like some beautiful little pearly gate opened up and little birdies were singing and it was sunshine and harps were playing? Maybe these other gospel writers were kind of shocked by that word. Found it embarrassing. Thought it might offend people. So they used a softer word. Whereas Mark, who was the first to write about it, told it like it was. Maybe. What really happened. Heaven was torn open. Urgently. Dramatically. Immediately. That's Mark's favorite word. He uses it 11 times. All the other gospel writers use the word immediately 10 times total. Mark uses it 11 times. And we're with Mark all year. So you can whenever I'm preaching, and often when Pastor House is preaching, we're going to bring this up. And me being superly dramatic. You're going to hear a lot about immediately. Right? Urgent. Almost as though Mark is wanting to say, without one moment to lose. Okay, here's one more amazing fact. Mark uses that word, schizomenos, that means tear open, only one other time in the whole story of Jesus. He uses it here, which is at the very start of the story, at the start of where Mark starts the story of Jesus' life, at the beginning of his ministry. And he uses it at the end of Jesus' life story. Mark chapter 15, verses 37 and 38, which say, when Jesus on the cross gave out a loud cry and breathed his last, and the curtain of the temple was torn open from top to bottom. What does that mean? That's pretty much another sermon, but for one thing, it certainly means that we're talking about something that's a matter of life and death in both circumstances. Yes, urgent. Yes, dramatic. Yes, immediate. Not a moment to lose. So this got me thinking about the jaws of life. In that moment, when someone with great power, great authority, shows up at the scene, and with also showing up with great commitment, great caring, great love. And you can't tell me that our brave firefighters and EMTs and emergency personnel, those dedicated rescue people, they're not out there just doing a job, are they? They're not out there just earning a living. They're not exercising their training. No, they are out there saving lives, hurling themselves in harm's way because they dare to hope, dare to act, dare to do it all in love and devotion to people in dire need of salvation. And they use those jaws of life, that tool, only because they're human and they need that extra power and that protection of that device. Because you know what? If they could, they would tear open that truck with their bare hands to get somebody out of there. Just like you would for someone that you love, if you had that power. And so, my friends, what if we all wake up tomorrow morning facing another rough and tumble Monday, but this time we remember that we too have been baptized. And that being baptized means, among many things, it means that whatever danger we may face, whenever we feel trapped, alone, scared, unable to get out from under whatever is crushing or burning all around us, what if we have a God ready, urgent, dramatically, immediately, at a moment's notice, ready, with jaws and arms and hands and feet of life, strong enough to pry open the hands of Satan himself, promising, yes, to tear open the heavens themselves, so that he can fly to our side and set us free. If you think about your baptism like that, what do we have to fear? None. Not a thing. Not even death itself.